Welcome, wrestling fans, to a journey through the heart-pounding, body-slamming world of WWE. Join me into 5 unforgettable stories, each packed with drama, power, and the kind of action only the squared circle can deliver. From the roar of the crowd to the legends who built an empire, get ready to relive the moments that defined an era. This is WWE. 5 stories that shook the ring.
This is the story of a man who was never supposed to be the guy. It's the story of how a bearded, 5'10" vegetarian from Aberdeen, Washington, forced a billion-dollar empire to change its plans through the sheer, deafening roar of the people. This is the legend of the Yes Movement. The story doesn't start at WrestleMania 30. It starts 2 years earlier, at WrestleMania 28, in a moment that was meant to bury Daniel Bryan forever. He walked into that ring as the World Heavyweight Champion, leaned over to give his girlfriend AJ Lee a good luck kiss, turned around, and was instantly leveled by a brogue kick from Sheamus. 18 seconds. That was it. The match was over, and to the powers that be, Daniel Bryan's time as a serious threat was over, too. But something strange happened the next night on Raw. The fans didn't laugh at him. They didn't move on. Instead, they spent the entire night chanting his name. They hijacked segments he wasn't even in. They chanted, "Yes. Yes. Yes," until the cameras couldn't ignore it. Bryan spent the next year proving he was the best worker in the company, forming the unlikely Team Hell No with Kane, and winning over the hearts of every child and adult in the arena. By the summer of 2013, the momentum was a tidal wave. It forced John Cena, the ultimate face of the company, to handpick Daniel Bryan as his opponent for SummerSlam. That night, the impossible happened. Daniel Bryan beat John Cena clean in the middle of the ring. He was the WWE champion. The confetti was ready, the fans were weeping with joy, and then, the hammer dropped. Triple H, the special guest referee, kicked Bryan in the gut and dropped him with a pedigree. Randy Orton walked out, cashed in his Money in the Bank briefcase, and just like that, the dream was dead. The Authority was born. Triple H and Stephanie McMahon stood over Bryan's broken body and told the world the cold, hard truth of their business: Daniel Bryan was a B+ player. He didn't look like a champion, he didn't talk like a champion, and in their eyes, he would never be a champion. For months, they tortured him. They stripped him of titles on technicalities, they beat him down 4-on-1, and they pushed him back into the mid-card, hoping the fans would finally get bored and find a new hero. They even tried to submerge him in a dark storyline with the Wyatt family, thinking that if they turned him into a villain, the "yes" chants would finally stop. They were wrong. The breaking point came at the 2014 Royal Rumble. The fans expected Bryan to be the surprise number 30 entrant, the man to win it all and finally get his revenge. When the buzzer sounded and Rey Mysterio walked out instead, the arena turned into a furnace of resentment. They booed the legendary Mysterio. They booed the returning movie star, Batista. They booed the entire show because they realized the B+ player was being left behind again. But the WWE Universe realized they had a power the Authority couldn't control. They began to occupy Raw. On March 10, 2014, hundreds of fans flooded the ring and the ringside area, refusing to move, refusing to let the show continue until Triple H gave them what they wanted. Surrounded by a sea of "yes" signs, a cornered Triple H finally snapped. He agreed to face Bryan at WrestleMania 30. But Bryan pushed further. He demanded that if he beat Triple H, he be added to the main event for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. WrestleMania 30. New Orleans. The Superdome. Daniel Bryan started the night by doing the unthinkable. He beat Triple H in a wrestling clinic, pinning the game clean. But the Authority wasn't done. Triple H brutally attacked Bryan's shoulder after the match, leaving him a broken man for the main event against Randy Orton and Batista. When the main event arrived, it looked like a massacre. Orton and Batista, the two hand-picked A+ players, joined forces to take Bryan out. They executed a terrifying RKO Batista bomb combination through an announce table. Doctors brought out a stretcher. They strapped Bryan to it. The dream was ending the way the Authority always said it would, with Bryan being carried out of the arena. But then, Bryan clawed his way off that stretcher. With one good arm and a heart that refused to stop, he fought back into the ring. He trapped Batista in the yes lock. He leaned back with everything he had, the pain of 2 years of B-plus player insults fueling every ounce of pressure. Batista tapped. The sound that followed wasn't just a cheer, it was a release. 75,000 people chanting yes, in perfect unison as Daniel Bryan held both world titles high above his head. He had beaten the system. He had beaten the Authority. He had proven that sometimes, the B-plus player is the only one who truly matters. Close your eyes and imagine working at the same company for 11 years. You're the model employee. You're reliable, you're flashy, and you're a literal human highlight reel. But every time you reach for the glass ceiling, the brass tells you, you're great, but you're just not the guy. That was Kofi Kingston's reality for over a decade. But in 2019, a freak accident, a box of pancakes, and a groundswell of fan energy collided to create the most organic, emotional, and improbable championship win in the history of professional wrestling. This is the story of KofiMania. The Gatekeeper. Before we get to the magic, we have to look at the grind. By 2019, Kofi Kingston was a veteran. He was a multi-time Intercontinental and Tag Team Champion, mostly known for his Spider-Man saves at the Royal Rumble. He was part of the New Day, a trio that saved his career, but they were seen as a comedy act. Great for merch sales, great for a laugh, but never considered for the WWE Championship. The plan for WrestleMania 35 didn't include Kofi. It didn't even include a singles match for him. The spot belonged to Mustafa Ali. But then, destiny stepped in. Ali suffered a concussion just days before the Elimination Chamber, and WWE needed a replacement. They looked at the roster and said, give it to the veteran. Give it to Kofi. The hour that changed everything. February 12, 2019. SmackDown Live. A gauntlet match to determine who enters the chamber last. Kofi starts the match against the WWE Champion, Daniel Bryan. Then he faces Jeff Hardy. Then Samoa Joe. Kofi stays in that ring for over an hour. He isn't just surviving, he's out-wrestling the best in the world. The crowd, which started the night polite, is now unglued. They aren't chanting for the New Day, they are chanting KOFI. KOFI. Even though he eventually loses the gauntlet, a spark had been lit. The WWE Universe realized they had been ignoring a legend in plain sight for 11 years. The new B-plus player. But here is where the story gets poetic. The villain of this tale was Daniel Bryan, the man who, 5 years earlier, had his own underdog, yes, movement. But now, Bryan had become the planet's champion, a smug, self-righteous heel who looked at Kofi and saw a B-plus player. Then came the final boss, Vince McMahon. In some of the most frustrating television ever produced, McMahon became the roadblock. He told Kofi he wasn't championship material. He forced Kofi to compete in another gauntlet match, and after Kofi miraculously won it, Vince added a sixth opponent, Daniel Bryan, just to screw him over. The fans were grieving. They were angry. The story shifted from a wrestling match to a fight against the machine. It culminated when Kofi's brothers, Big E and Xavier Woods, had to win a tag team gauntlet just to earn Kofi a title shot. When they won, the entire locker room, faces and heels, emptied out to hug them. The movement was too big to stop. MetLife Stadium, the dream realized. April 7, 2019. WrestleMania 35. Over 80,000 people in New Jersey. The atmosphere was heavy. This wasn't just about a title, it was about representation. It was about a man born in Ghana who had never had a singles world title match in over 3,500 days with the company. The match was an emotional roller coaster. Bryan worked on Kofi's technical weaknesses, trying to prove he didn't belong. But Kofi had the power of positivity and the spirit of the fans behind him. In the closing moments, Bryan locks in the label lock. The world holds its breath. Kofi doesn't tap. He fights out, he stands up, and he unleashes the trouble in paradise. 1, 2, 3. The roar of the crowd was deafening. Big E and Xavier Woods sprinted into the ring with a custom WWE title, one made of leather and gold, replacing Daniel Bryan's eco-friendly hemp belt. Kofi's young sons hopped into the ring, holding the gold, as blue and gold confetti rained down. The legacy. KofiMania wasn't a manufactured marketing campaign. It was a thank you from the fans to a man who never complained, never gave up, and never stopped smiling. It proved that in the chaotic world of wrestling, sometimes the good guy actually wins. 11 years of work, 1 hour of excellence, and a lifetime of legacy. KofiMania reminded us why we love this business. It wasn't about the script, it was about the man. They call it professional wrestling. But for 3 years, it wasn't just a show. It was a family tragedy played out in front of millions. It was a story of gaslighting, love, betrayal, and the heavy weight of a crown that no one was meant to wear alone. This is the story of the bloodline. The story begins with a void. For years, WWE tried to make Roman Reigns the hero everyone wanted him to be. But in the summer of 2020, Roman decided he didn't care what we wanted. He aligned with the wise man, Paul Heyman, and declared himself the tribal chief. He wasn't just a champion, he was the provider. The head of the table. But a king needs a kingdom, and Roman started with his own blood. Remember the I Quit match? That wasn't about a title. It was about submission. Roman didn't just want to beat Jey Uso, he wanted to break his spirit. He forced Jey to acknowledge him, not as a brother, but as a master. And for 2 years, the Usos became his soldiers. They were the greatest tag team in the world, but in Roman's shadow, they were just tools. Then came the anomaly. Sami Zayn. An outsider. A conspiracy theorist who just wanted to belong. At first, it was a joke. Roman used him. The Usos laughed at him. But then, something happened that no one expected, we started to care. Sami brought out the humanity in the bloodline. He made Jey Uso smile again. He became the honorary Us. For a moment, it felt like this dark family had finally found a light. But Roman Reigns doesn't do light. He does loyalty. Absolute, blind loyalty. The choice. Hit your best friend, or lose your family. When Sami Zayn swung chair into Roman's back instead of Kevin's, the arena didn't just cheer, they screamed. It was the first crack in the foundation. The explosion that followed at WrestleMania 39, where Sami and Kevin finally took the titles from the Usos, felt like the end of an era. But the real tragedy was only beginning. I'm doing what you should have done a long time ago. That's what Jimmy told Jey. The brothers were finally free. The Bloodline Civil War was the peak of the cinema. At Money in the Bank, in London, Jey Uso did the impossible. He pinned Roman Reigns. But freedom has a price. Jealousy tore the twins apart. Jimmy betrayed Jey. Jey left for Raw. The family was shattered. Roman was alone, more paranoid than ever, clinging to the only person left who wouldn't talk back, Solo Sikoa, the enforcer. Then, the final boss arrived. The Rock didn't just join the bloodline, he weaponized it. He brought a level of violence we hadn't seen in decades. He made it his mission to ensure Cody Rhodes would never finish his story. It felt hopeless. Roman had the titles, the family, and now, the biggest movie star on the planet. WrestleMania 41 wasn't just a match. It was an exorcism. Every ghost from Roman's past came back to haunt him. When the referee's hand hit the mat for the 3 count, a 1,316-day reign ended. The tribal chief had fallen. Today, the bloodline name lives on under Solo Sikoa, a new, more ruthless version. But the original story, the one about a man who lost his soul to feed his family, and the brothers who had to burn their home down to find themselves, that story is over. Roman Reigns once told us to acknowledge him. In the end, we didn't just acknowledge his power. We acknowledged his pain. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that define the ring. Wrestling is built on moments. Some make you cry. Some make you angry. And some just make your jaw hit the floor because you cannot believe what you just witnessed. Forget everything else. If you want to talk about the absolute peak of modern WWE storytelling, the single greatest magic trick Vince McMahon ever pulled, we have to go back to Santa Clara. 2015, WrestleMania 31. It's the moment the architect burned down the blueprint. It was the night 3 separate, violent destinies crashed into each other in the middle of the ring to create the perfect storm. Today, we are breaking down the road to the WrestleMania 31 main event. How the Beast, the Big Dog, and the Traitor converged to save WrestleMania from disaster. Let's go. To understand why the end of WrestleMania 31 matters, you have to understand the board state. And sitting at the head of the table was this man, Brock Lesnar. By early 2015, Lesnar wasn't just a champion. He was Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet. He had done the unthinkable, he broke The Undertaker's streak. He didn't just beat John Cena for the WWE title, he squashed him like a bug in what was basically a televised murder at SummerSlam. Brock was a part-time mercenary holding the belt hostage. He was billed as an unbeatable, legitimate fighter in a world of entertainers. The narrative was simple, nobody on planet Earth can stop this man in a one-on-one fight. If you stepped in the ring with him, you weren't trying to win, you were trying to survive. Enter the challenger. The WWE machine decided that the man to slay the Beast was the powerhouse of the fallen Shield, Roman Reigns. On paper, it made sense. He had the look, the lineage, and the intensity. But in reality, it was a disaster. The road to WrestleMania went straight off a cliff at the 2015 Royal Rumble in Philly. The fans didn't want Roman, they wanted Daniel Bryan. When Bryan was dumped out early, the crowd turned feral. When Roman won the match, the boos were deafening. It was nuclear heat. They even brought out The Rock to raise Roman's hand, and the fans booed The Rock. That's how much they rejected this forced coronation. So, heading into WrestleMania, the narrative is broken. You have an unbeatable monster champion that the fans respect, versus a babyface challenger the fans absolutely despise. WWE is staring down the barrel of their biggest show of the year ending in a riot. They needed a miracle. They needed a plan B. And that plan B had been ticking like a time bomb since the previous summer. Seth Rollins. The man who shattered the Shield. The authorities sell out Golden Boy. Seth was the ultimate slimeball villain. He hid behind Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. But he held the golden ticket, the money in the bank briefcase. For months, Seth loomed over the title picture like a vulture. The connection between the three men is thick here. Seth stabbed Roman in the back to get where he was, and he was terrified of Brock Lesnar. And crucially, earlier that same night at WrestleMania, Seth lost. Randy Orton hit him with the greatest RKO of all time. Seth's ego was bruised. He was desperate to prove that selling his soul was worth it. The stage is set. A monster, a rejected hero, and a desperate opportunist. The main event begins, and it is not a wrestling match. It is a public mugging. Brock Lesnar tears Roman Reigns apart. This is where the legend of Suplex City is born. But then, the story shifts. Roman starts laughing. He's getting destroyed, but he won't stay down. He eats 3 F5s. The crowd, who hated Roman 20 minutes ago, starts to begrudgingly respect the toughness. Roman manages to bust Brock open against the ring post. The beast is bleeding. Roman hits 3 Superman punches. 2 spears. Brock kicks out, but they are both dead. The irresistible force has met the immovable object, and they have annihilated each other. The referee is counting them both down. The match has reached a complete stalemate. There is no winner. And then the music hits. Seth Rollins is sprinting down the ramp. The place goes absolutely ballistic. He slides into the ring, he slams the briefcase into referee Mike Chioda's chest. He is cashing in. This isn't waiting until the match is over. He's inserting himself right now. It's a triple threat match. It's pure chaos. Seth hits the stomp on Brock. He goes for another, Brock catches him. He's going for the F5, Roman out of nowhere with the spear on Lesnar. Brock rolls out of the ring. Roman stumbles up, turns around, curb stomp from Rollins. 1, 2, 3. Unbelievable. Seth Rollins pinned the guy who wasn't supposed to be there, while the unbeatable champion is outside the ring. Michael Cole calls it perfectly, the heist of the century. Why is this the best moment of modern WWE? Because it was a masterclass in narrative convergence. WWE took 3 massive, complicated storylines, Lesnar's dominance, the fans rejecting Roman's push, and Seth's betrayal of the Shield, and crashed them together in a 10-second sequence that nobody saw coming. It saved Roman Reigns from being booed out of the building. It kept Brock Lesnar looking strong. And it solidified Seth Rollins as the ultimate main event villain. It was shocking, it was logical, and it was absolutely perfect pro wrestling. But what do you think? Was this the best cash-in of all time? Let me know in the comments. Crush that like button and subscribe for more wrestling history. Until next time, keep watching the skies.
History isn't usually a straight line. It's a web. In 1997, the WWF was a crumbling empire. WCW was winning. Vince McMahon was desperate. And in the center of it all were 3 men who truly, deeply hated each other. The legend Bret Hart, the prodigy Shawn Michaels, and the conscience The Undertaker. We talk about the Attitude Era like it was a planned revolution. It wasn't. It was an accident. And it all started with one swing of a steel chair that echoed through eternity. To understand the emotion, you have to understand the Hart Foundation versus USA storyline. Bret Hart had become a villain in America but a god in the rest of the world. He spent every Monday night on Raw cutting promos that felt uncomfortably real, spitting on the American way, and the fans who cheered for degenerates. Then there was Shawn Michaels. He was the showstopper, but he was also a lightning rod for controversy. In the weeks leading up to SummerSlam, the tension between Shawn and Bret wasn't pro-wrestling heat. It was personal. They had real-life backstage fights. They couldn't stand to be in the same room. The segment, Vince McMahon, playing the desperate mediator, forced Shawn to be the special guest referee for Bret versus Undertaker. Shawn's promise? If I show favoritism, I'll never wrestle in the US again. The moment, August 3rd, 1997. The end of the match. Bret spits in Shawn's face. A disgusting, visceral insult. Shawn loses his mind. He swings the chair. Bret ducks. Crack. Narrator. The sound wasn't just metal on bone. It was the sound of the old world dying. Shawn was forced to count the 1, 2, 3 for his hated rival, Bret Hart. He had accidentally made his enemy the champion and made the dead man his hunter. The weeks following SummerSlam were a masterclass in psychological descent. Shawn didn't apologize. He became a victim. He walked out on Raw and told the fans, "If you don't like me, move out of the way." The promos. This is when we saw the infamous snot promo. Shawn stood in the ring, literally wiping his nose with a Canadian flag, crying fake tears, and laughing at the chaos he caused. He and Hunter Hearst Helmsley began acting like teenagers in the back, mocking the old guard and the rules, the threat. But while Shawn was playing games, a shadow was growing. The Undertaker began appearing in the rafters, silent and terrifying. He didn't want the title. He wanted Shawn's soul. Commissioner SGT. Slaughter realized that Shawn's antics and Hunter's interference were making traditional matches impossible. He looked at Shawn and said, "You want to run? There's nowhere left to go." He announced Hell in a Cell. While Shawn was losing his mind, Paul Bearer was whispering a nightmare into the microphone every week. He was telling the story of a fire, a story of a brother left to burn. The emotional weight of bad blood was suffocating. You had Shawn Michaels, bloody, screaming, and trapped. And The Undertaker, a man finally getting his vengeance. It is arguably the greatest told story in the history of the ring. The climax. Undertaker has Shawn beaten. He's about to end the HBK era. Then, the red lights, the organ. When Kane walked down that aisle, he didn't just debut. He broke the Undertaker's heart. Taker's face said it all. The ghost of his past had come to haunt his present. Shawn wins the match by accident, a bloody mess, crawling over his victim. Now watch the web expand. Emboldened by his win, Shawn officially names his group Degeneration X the following week. They are the middle finger to Bret Hart's traditionalism. The screwjob. Because Shawn won in the cell, he is booked against Bret at Survivor Series. But the tension behind the curtain is at a breaking point. Vince McMahon, fearful that Bret will take the title to WCW, commits the ultimate sin. The bell rings. Bret is screwed. The hitman is gone. But in the fallout, a new monster is created. Not Kane, not Shawn, but Mr. McMahon. By betraying Bret, Vince becomes the ultimate corporate villain, the exact target a man like Stone Cold Steve Austin needs. We enter 1998. The landscape is scorched. Shawn is the champion, but he's a marked man. The Royal Rumble injury. During a casket match with The Undertaker, a feud still burning from that SummerSlam chair shot, Shawn takes a back body drop onto the edge of the casket. 3 discs in his back are crushed. Shawn is now a broken man, but he refuses to let go. He enters a psychological war with the 1998 Rumble winner, Stone Cold Steve Austin. The power play, DX aligns with Mike Tyson. Feels like the world is against Austin. The promos, Austin isn't fighting for respect or dignity like Bret was. He's fighting to tear down the empire Shawn and Vince built. The climax, WrestleMania 14. Shawn Michaels is in agony, barely able to walk. He's facing a man who represents everything the old guard feared. The finish, Austin ducks the sweet chin music. Stunner. Tyson, the man DX thought was their enforcer, fast counts the 3. Look at the journey. If Shawn doesn't hit Taker with a chair at SummerSlam, he doesn't win in the cell. If he doesn't win the cell, he doesn't face Bret in Montreal. Without Montreal, we don't get the evil Mr. McMahon. And without that villain, Austin's rise isn't a revolution. It's just a title win. 1 chair shot created the cell. The cell created DX. DX created the tension for Montreal. Montreal created the era. It was a masterpiece of accidental brilliance. The night Shawn Michaels swung that chair, he thought he was ending a match. Instead, he was starting a war that WWE would eventually win. Which moment in this timeline hits the hardest for you? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that built this business.